Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learned along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I'm introducing you to Nadene Joy, who is a communications expert, a CEO and elite visionary who helps leaders, business professionals and influencers achieve their top audacious goals. I love that word. And to live a greater, fulfilling, prosperous life. She is a global mindset strategist, the chair and founder of the Global Lead to Impact Summit and Forum, a former senior oil executive and petroleum exploration geologist. She's the founder of the Global Movement of Hope and an international bestselling author and speaker. Being a top expert in her field, she's also featured on top global media outlets, including USA Today, CBC, NBC, Corporate Investment Times, and many others. I've had the privilege and honor of working with her personally, including top leaders like John Maxwell and Kevin Harrington, Sharon Lechter, Gary Coxe. The list goes on and on. She has also radically transformed thousands of lives globally in almost every country of the world to date. So this is one super amazing lady. She's a true one-of-a-kind global changemaker and visionary. And the most amazing thing that we're going to talk about today is her unique God-given gift of pinpointing and dissolving blocks from traumas, negative past experiences that keep people and their businesses feeling stuck and unable to grow exponentially. And that's what we all want to do, grow exponentially so that we can have success and fulfillment, purpose, prosperity, and wealth, which we know is truly limitless once we are bold enough and brave enough to tap into that. So welcome to the program, Nadene.
Thank you so much.
Nadene, you're coming to us from Canada, and I'm in Australia. So it's great to always be linking up with women globally, just sharing what they're doing in their own space. And you've certainly done a lot for someone who still looks so young. So well done you. And you've also told me you've got 4 children as well. So you've certainly done the big career juggle, but you're still looking pretty happy and pretty balanced. So let's talk through, what do you do today? What does a week look like for Nadene? And then we'll unpack the journey that you have gone through to achieve the incredible accolades that you have done thus far.
Thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate that so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. So as of right now, and we'll talk more about my journey as we continue our conversation. But right now, my main focus is, like you said, I work with people all around the world, leaders, influencers, presidents, and I say leaders in general. It's not necessarily it doesn't have to be CEOs, because I believe we're all leaders, right? We all have that ability to impact and positively impact lives. So even if you're a teacher or a principal of a school, or even a mom for that matter, right? Or a dad, we have influence and we're leaders. So I have worked from, everybody from the people who are homeless to families to youth to children, all the way up to working with leaders and some of the top people in our world, and also billionaires. So I've had the opportunity, and I say the privilege, of working with everybody from the bottom all the way to the top. So to me, we're all just people. We're all one in this together. There's no such thing as like this hierarchy in my world. I always look at it as the person from the inside out, not the outside in. And the people that I work with now, a lot of the people who come to me it's interesting because I believe, what we go through in life and the things that we've learned, the wisdom we've acquired, the experiences, the other people we've worked with, the mentors that we've learned from, it's interesting because a lot of the people that are coming to me are people who are, where I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or even, 2 decades ago when I first got started. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, I can relate to where they're at because I've been there, right? I've been there, I've done that. And I think that's a huge part of what I do, is helping people really, kind of tap into their full potential of who they really are, and help them get to this level that's really limitless that we have in our lives. There's really no ceiling to how far we can go, how much we can achieve, the character that we can become as a person, as a leader, a role model in society. And that's really the basic to it. I try to keep things simple in everything I do. I think simplicity is key. Simplicity is king, as we hear quite so often in our world. And that's what I try and do with everybody I work with, is let's keep it simple. Let's, get rid of the ceiling that we have, that society says we have to do a certain way or have to act a certain way in order to be successful or deemed successful, which is an illusion, isn't actually reality. So let's bring back authenticity and really help people expand to their fullest potential with absolutely no limits whatsoever.
100%. That's right. Most of them are self-imposed limits or rules that other people have made that you kind of go, well, they're not working for me. They're very restrictive and frustrating. And so once you lift the lid on that, I agree 100% that there are no limits with what we can achieve. And we certainly see that in our world every single day, people pushing the boundaries. What drives you for that, though? So for a woman who worked before as an oil executive, then how did you then get an extreme passionate for educating, particularly empowering from young children, alleviating poverty and hunger, these sorts of, core world issues? What made you to become so passionate about that area?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I grew up and we didn't have a lot of money in our family. Some days we didn't even have enough money for food on the table, that type of thing. But we always had, the basic necessities were always there, right? We always had what we absolutely needed and nothing more, right? But so it's like having come from a background of not having very much, and that almost the scarcity mindset that we live in when we're brought up in an environment where there's usually never enough, or there's always, got to save for a rainy day, and, that kind of mentality. And then going from, something like that to, for example, like you mentioned, working as an oil executive and, winning awards right out of school. I graduated top of my class. I got to work with a CEO. He was actually, or is still actually, the CEO of the largest oil company, multi-billion dollar company here in Canada. I had the opportunity to work with him there was a representative from each province across Canada, across our nation, that got selected to work with these top leaders right out of school. So I would have been 21, 22 years old and had this opportunity to really learn from some of the best leaders. And I think that's, looking back on it, it was such a blessing. And I didn't necessarily realize the blessings that were in those experiences at the time. But now that I'm where I am now, I can look back on that and say, I learned so much just from those, those experiences. I worked actually out in the field as a well site geologist on the rig. So the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. But the things, I like to share that story because a lot of people would never have known that about me, that's something that I did, because I had this vision. So another thing you mentioned, I'm a visionary. I get visions of certain things, that I see that are coming, that I know that are really, kind of inside of me, that are almost like bursting. And I saw this vision of me working as an executive. But in order to be an executive and supervise, these wells that were being drilled, I needed to start at the bottom. I needed to understand and experience what that was like actually working in those areas myself, so that I could really understand when I'm on the phone with them at 3 a.m. or various things. I was on call all the time to really understand what that looked like. And I share that story because I worked up, we worked our ways. We sold the company, got brought on with the second company, did the same thing. But it was actually about a month before we went to sell the second company where I went to get up and out of bed, and I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so sick. And I was a workaholic at that time. I worked all the time, 24 hours a day, perfectionist, had all these tendencies that I thought I needed to do. And by the time I was, 24 years old, I basically had achieved all of the, we have those little boxes that we feel like we have to check in life. And if we check those boxes, then we feel like, okay, I've made it. I'm successful. I've done everything that I wanted to do. But for me, it was such a young age that I checked all these boxes, and I thought, well, now what? Now what am I going to do? I have the rest of my life ahead of me. And at that time, I realized, I'm not really helping anybody. I'm not really doing things to contribute to society in a way that I felt like my soul, my heart was on fire. And there was a disconnect. I felt like there was a disconnect. I got sick at 28 years old. I was basically forced to retire my career as a geologist. Like I said, right before we were about to sell our second company. And that was actually the journey that allowed me to come back. I believe it was always inside of me, but it wasn't until I got so sick and I was down to now 90 pounds, literally skin and bones, on my bathroom floor in the hospital every other day. The medical professionals couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And it was a 1.5-year journey, actually, of trying to figure out what was wrong and getting better. And it was a whole bunch. I changed my entire life. The people that I was surrounded with, the food that I ate, the thoughts that I was thinking, every part of my life changed at this moment and brought me back. And I knew when I was 4 years old, I literally knew when I was 4 years old. I remember playing outside with a group of friends that we had, and I played outside all the time when I was a small child. Yeah. And I remember even thinking then that I just want to help people. But I had this vision, even as a 4-year-old girl, of making a big difference in the world, and being afraid of that because it was so big and nobody else around me had these big visions and knew these things about people and about life and all these things. So I repressed the gifts that I was given until I got sick and almost died. I almost lost my life. And it was that catapult and almost like this switch that went off one day when I was laying in my bathroom floor. I was thinking, I had no hope. And this is where the whole idea of hope, because my name actually means hope. Nadene means hope. Oh. And it was something about, I heard the voice of God for me, and it was all about, you're actually, the words that I heard were, it's time to get your big girl pants back on and stand up and stop playing victim. That you can do this, and you're meant to help a lot of other people through this. And it was, just this idea of doing whatever it took. I ended up working with top professionals around the world, psychologists, every modality that I could find, that I could get my hands on, that I could learn about, in hopes to trying to get to that root cause and really, understanding what that looks like. So having gone from the bottom to the top to kind of the bottom again, it was like going through this roller coaster of emotions in my life to be able to really be able to relate to certain people and come into a field of being, a coach, which I started actually when my son was born 13 years ago now as a parenting coach. That's where it all started. So I can tell you more about the journey as we go on in our conversation, because there's definitely lots to it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And what an incredible roller coaster ride, actually, that you've been through. And I know many people listening in have been on those journeys or are on those journeys of just going, is this it? So here you've gone from imagine achieving everything on your list by 24, by the way, slightly overachieving there. But also to go from the highs of that, having those opportunities, which you don't appreciate at the time, when you've actually sort of just, rolled into a situation where you have, incredible inspirational mentors, really is what I was hearing from you, but you don't realize because, you just think, well, doesn't everyone get a boss like this? Isn't this the norm? You don't know what's exceptional sometimes when you're in it. And then also to have such a massive burnout, like it just sounded incredible, and so I think there's so many elements, I'm sure, and from a psychology perspective, unpacking, that desire to be enough and what that can do to you, to appreciating your own value and self-worth, looking after yourself so that you don't have to be constantly striving. And I think I heard from you sharing just that overwhelming desire. And often when people ask me, what do I want to do? When we tap in as coaches, well, what did you love doing when you were a little girl, or what did you think about? I think that was just absolutely striking that you had that awareness, that you actually wanted to just help people. How hard is that? And I love the word simplicity that you shared, Nadene, because that's right. If you can have some simplicity, you get more focus, right? You get more joy in that moment. You can actually do more, whereas we overcomplicate things all the time. What did you learn from that when you were back at 24, though, and you did have that amazing boss leader? What did you learn from their leadership style that you admired?
Yeah, so I actually had, you nailed it, and when you said that about having great mentors, because it wasn't just the CEO that I had the opportunity to go and study with, like right out of school. It was the next boss that I had working for a global company in the top oil place in all of Canada. It was also my supervisor working as a well site geologist, and also the CEO of the two companies where I got to be an executive, who was also a lawyer and a phenomenal, one of the best actually business leaders that I've ever met, connected. So some of the, just looking back on it, some of the qualities of all of them actually, and the VP of the company, just like phenomenal human beings, I would say. First off, just very kind, very compassionate individuals, very intelligent. They had just this sense of innate wisdom, almost beyond comprehension, when you would speak with them, when you would connect with them, and patience. It's one thing too that I didn't understand at the time, but looking back, there was just such an innate level of patience, and also of the ability to stay calm no matter what storm was brewing. I'm going to use that term around them. So no matter how chaotic things were, they tended to just really, kind of take a step back, look at it from a higher perspective, and remain this really strong, grounded, centered strength of a leader, right? This very strong leader who really, no matter what, they had this wisdom that would come out of them that was so profound. So I would say patience, I would say wisdom, and through their experience, many of them, they lived through many experiences that they can speak from, and then having that sense of remaining calm no matter what was going on, and being able to have a sense of curiosity and being open-minded to new ways of doing things. And I think that was a lot of, the success, even as an executive geologist, that I had, and the ability to move up the ladder, was they saw in me that sense of curiosity, and allowed me to use that innovative curiosity to use, to the benefit of the organization, so that we could take it to the next level and do things that weren't being done, and try new things that ended up being, very successful in the end. So yeah, I think that's a great question, because there's so many other qualities I could talk about, right? Humility, connection, right? Connectivity to the people, that ability to connect with people, I would say, is also another a very strong communicative aspect of all of the leaders. Yeah.
I love the way you've shared that, because those are the sorts of qualities that, we as leaders would love other people to see in us. It's like you're describing someone who's actually soaring, right? I love that feeling when you're actually soaring, and you're dropping in on situations, and you're observing them, and you're assessing, monitoring them, and you're supporting other people in them, and you're asking them to bring out their best, which requires risk, and it requires, that creativity. It requires their curiosity to kick in. It requires potential failures, which are then going to be learning curves. All of those qualities, I think that is wonderful that you had that. And for those aspiring to sort of meet those people, please keep leaning in to sort of absorb yourself. And what you'll notice by definitely what Nadine's been sharing is that these people, when we think of, these top leaders, they're not running at 100 miles an hour, right? They're not the qualities that you share. They're not just like so busy, never stopping, never having time for people. They're actually doing the opposite, and they still manage to achieve incredible things. So thank you for describing that to us. I loved another aspect that you shared before, which was that you had to do every element of the job. And that is so true. And it doesn't matter if you're on an oil rig or if you're becoming an entrepreneur and you're starting up, people in my coaching programs becoming startups or scaling up. That is absolutely essential in all of our learning growth, because it does show you what every single person, what every cog in the wheel actually does and how they can contribute. And then when you get to senior leadership, you also know that we need to value the sum of the parts. Would you like to share a little bit more about that? Has that been your experience, that you were mentioning before that, yeah, every person in the company, you're all just people doing things at a different level, different stage, different for a different reason, that they're all required, every single part is necessary for the sum of the parts to get that synergy, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. And it's like everybody has their role. Everybody knows, how their role fits into the bigger picture. And that's another thing too, with, talking about the great mentors that I've had and great leaders also that I've worked with now over the years, is I had this innate ability to clearly communicate the mission and the vision of the organization so that everybody would know exactly where their part fit in, right? Everybody had their own part, but it's like they know this is the goal of the organization up here. For example, the companies I worked at, the goal was to sell the company within 2 to 3 years, 2 to 5 years, I think it was the actual goal. So we knew that's where we needed to get to a certain revenue, to a certain, and for me, it was like, how many barrels of oil a day are we producing? How many more wells do we need to drill? All of these type of things. So when we know where we're going, we know what we can focus on every day and focus on the little things to get there. It's not about, going from here to there overnight. It's like, okay, I need to go from here to here in this day, in this 24 hours. Like, what can I do to move myself and catapult, your organization? And again, whether you're working for an organization or whether you're an entrepreneur and have your own business, it's so important to continue to have consistency and focus every day to moving towards where you want to go, and not necessarily, looking backwards at the things that didn't work. Because when we do that, and I talk a lot on mental health too, because I know that's such an interesting field right now, just with what we've gone through. But when we think and we bring about the past, our actual psychological being doesn't know the difference of the event that we're thinking about that has happened in the past versus it actually happening right now in the present. And it doesn't know the difference between that. So when we think about something that didn't go well, or, like we're talking briefly about, traumas, or, a bad event that happened, or a loss, or whatever that was in a business financially, it's actually like you're reliving that. And that's when we come back into like the idea of depression. And we really want to try and get away from that as much as we can, focusing on the present moment. Because when we have the idea of the present moment, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do today? Not really necessarily having, too far in advance, but, thinking, okay, what's the big goal? Here's the big goal. What do I need to do today to get to that? But not necessarily focusing on worrying about, how to get there. Because when you know where you're going, the how will show up. That's one thing I've noticed in my career and with people I've worked on, the people that, focus on those little goals, those little steps each and every day, the how always shows up. And it's sometimes, actually most times, I'll rephrase that, most times it's in areas that you have no idea are going to show up. The unexpected. Yeah. It's like, always be ready to expect the unexpected. It is, that's one thing that all the adventures that come about each and every day that we don't necessarily even know are going to show up, and they most times end up showing up and being so much greater than what we could have ever imagined if we would have maybe even set a goal to be here, but maybe we're meant to be way up here that you can't even see it, right? It's like, so, but if we set our limit here, it's setting that limit on ourself and where we're going versus, maybe, the universe has greater plans for you, that it's meant to be so much greater, or meant to have all these other aspects that you never thought about along the way. So be open to change, be open to expecting the unexpected, and, take those small steps of consistency and focus every day.
Beautifully said. I love that. Really just you definitely need to have a vision. And if you're focused on the vision and are passionate about it, that's right. You don't have to have all of the plans in place. In fact, if you approach life from a business perspective, we're always refreshing, assessing, monitoring, adapting our strategic directions, although we still keep a core vision for many, many years, but we'll assess the way that we're going about it because things do change. Look at the last couple of years have shown us the whole planet's changed with a virus.
Exactly.
And so when we do limit ourselves by this is the way things have to happen, and I remember talking to you before saying, when you're a perfectionist and you want things done in a certain way, that can be a downfall because that's it. Life doesn't happen in a certain specific way every single time. In fact, most of the time it has quite a few surprises that it throws in the mix. That's for sure. I'd love to talk to you then about, from the mental health perspective, here we are living in a world now that there's so much positive mindset stuff out there that we all, want to be bigger, better, faster, and more amazing. But there's so much trauma and blocks based on people's limiting beliefs. The fact that we still do anchor ourselves on things that happened 10 years, 20 years ago, and that it robs us of reaching our full potential. Why do you think that is so?
So first of all, I just want to touch upon, you mentioned this earlier of, even for myself, when I was going through the journey of, when I got sick and getting better and trying to figure out, how do I get to the root cause of what's making me sick? Yeah. And one thing that I noticed is there's a lot of good people out there that can help you temporarily or short term, but it's very difficult to find somebody who can really pinpoint the root cause and help you dissolve that root so that it's completely disseminated, I guess, so to speak, out of your consciousness and out of your entire, your body. Because when we hold things like that, what I found too is there's always a connection. So what we think about and what we bring into our, spirituality, like our soul, from an energetic perspective. And this is more of a psychological, I guess, just based on my own experiences and people that I've worked with. When we hold those things, even unknowingly, right? Most times things that happen to us, it's 95%, 95 actually to 97%, even greater than that, subconscious, that most of us aren't aware. Certain events from our past are even still being held somewhere in our body until one day you wake up and, maybe you have a really bad pain in your neck and you're like, oh, I don't really know what's going on. I got this pain. I can't really move my head one way. And it's just like this shooting pain, but you don't realize that, okay, maybe there's, and again, I'm just using this as an example, but maybe there's been somebody in your life that's really been a pain in the neck that you haven't necessarily dealt with, and you keep kind of pushing it back, not dealing with it, and just going about your day with busyness, right? Keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself distracted by all the things in life so that you don't necessarily have to deal with that person or deal with the pain or deal with the things that you went through in childhood, if it's abuse or trauma, or if it's, it can be so many things, addictions, it can be the loss. Like for myself, it was the loss of my father when he left my mom when I was a baby. And I didn't even realize that had affected me until I got sick, because I always had kept myself so busy so that I didn't have to deal with that pain that I didn't even know was there. I didn't even know it was a part of who I was and was keeping me limited in my potential until the awareness is there. So the first step to really recognizing that is having the awareness, thinking back in your life through the events of, the difficult things you went through, and even the great things, for example, too. It doesn't have to be just the horrible things we go through that catapult us forward, but it can be, the great things that happen too. And the energy that you have that it's holding inside your body, and how do you get rid of that? So first of all, first step is always awareness. And then second step is acknowledging that, right? Honestly, authentically acknowledging that it's there and recognizing that it's there. And then once you acknowledge it, you can get to the point where you can release it and let it go. So that's the third step, is letting it go once and for all. And it might be where you sit there. And for me, it was a lot of time, just in silence. And that's one thing that's also missing, I noticed, in the business world in general, especially with, top leaders, is because they are so busy. They have so many responsibilities. They don't necessarily take the time that's required to spend time with themselves, just in silence. And this is golden. This has been the one thing I would say, if you don't take away anything else from our interview, I would say, just pay attention to what I'm about to say next, is literally taking that time for yourself first thing in the morning, before you pick up your phone, before you do anything, to just sit in silence and meditate or pray, or whatever sort of practice you have. And even if that's, and I know that's such a difficult thing for so many people, even if you spend 5 minutes to start doing that, and eventually work your way up to a half an hour. For me, I spend an hour every morning where I have a routine that I go through, and it's literally been, I attribute my meditation, my prayer practice, to everything that's happened to me over the past 2 decades, has been from those moments where I've been in silence. And for me, I'm a person of faith, so it's where God has spoken to me and given me the insights and the visions of the next steps I need to do, the things I need to let go of, maybe the things that I want to move towards, but maybe isn't necessarily aligned with who I am. And having a mission statement for yourself, not just for your business, but for yourself, for who you are. What are your morals? What are your values? What are the things that really set your heart and your soul on fire? And only move towards those things. If something comes your way, go back to your list and check them off. And I always say you need to check off all of the things on your list. So create 4 or 5 things that are the most important things. And if there's even one that's missing, it's a no. If it's not 100%, it's a no. Lots of people think, oh, well, it feels pretty good. Maybe, 99%, even 95%. And I always say that's still a no. Unless it's 100%, it's a no. And it's a major awareness and realization for so many people, that you really have to be very clear on who you are before you can be able to really step into the next level of stepping into your full potential of whatever that is that makes you happy, that sets your heart on fire, that you just can't wait to get up and do. Like, what is that one thing that you would do where you just wanted, you could do it for fun all day long and not get paid for? That's what I always ask my clients. Like, think about that one thing. What is that? What is that for you? And whatever comes your way, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's even a podcast, right? Something like you and I are doing. It can be a business partnership, a friendship. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what that is, to make sure that it's aligned with who you are. Because if you're putting yourself in a situation that isn't necessarily in alignment with you, that's going to cause a disconnect, and it's going to cause over time some sort of sacrifice to be made, which eventually will lead to some sort of imbalance in your body and your soul, which eventually will likely lead to some sort of disease or something, or pain, or manifesting in the physical realm of your body. And again, I'm speaking from my own experience, because I've had many times where I hadn't listened to that voice, and I did do things that weren't in alignment when I was first in my business and first getting started. So I'm speaking from experience when I say that. And I've, again, from thousands of people I've worked with from around the world as well. Yeah.
You've tapped into a extremely common experience, and I can certainly relate to it myself. I was a mum of 5, including 2 sets of twins. My twins were born 26 months apart, while juggling 3 degrees and just working crazy and trying to make everything happen and try and just do so much. And that's what you've tapped into there too, of, the permission to actually just stop, permission to breathe, permission to center yourself, and to know what your non-negotiables are. I love what you shared there, because that's exactly one of the key learnings that I had to learn on my journey. What 3, 4, 5 things are not negotiable. Is your moral compass. It's what's true to your heart, because even if it's 95%, you're never going to be happy, and you're going to give a part of yourself that you're going to regret. And that requires a boldness, right? You have to actually back yourself and say something, because sometimes opportunities can seem amazing, but they're not quite right. And so it does require that boldness and that strength of character to actually say no. I will say no, because I believe, that the right thing will be coming up next. It's not always a pick me. It's actually I am worthy, and I will choose what is right for me. And from that personal and professional perspective. And I love what you shared there about it, centering yourself in these ways, because one of my coaching programs is Life by Design, and it's got a half of it personal and half of it professional. And I've met so many professional ladies go, I just want to do the professional side. And it's really fascinating that I go, okay, we can start there. And within a very short period of time, you've got to actually do the personal first, because it is the foundations, obviously, of everything that you do. And if you look at all, top leaders, that's right. What do we know about, top change managers around the world? They all read a lot, which takes time, right? They value their diet, their exercise. They value the connections that they have and spending time with people. All of these, they value affirmations and that quiet time, and having time to even just walk in the woods or be alone with their thoughts to contemplate deep things. And so in a time that, look at how many people do you meet that say, I've never been busier in my life, right? They're busy,
Yes.
busy. And you kind of go, yeah, well, busy, you can feel that you're a certain level of productive, but it's amazing that when you pull yourself away from the constant busy to be very intentional, what actually can be achieved, but a better quality, and definitely when we're talking success, this podcast is Memoirs of Successful Women. I think success and balance and happiness all come in alignment with me. Is that what, success in its own sense? What is that? We'll meet a lot of amazing people, but what does that truly mean if you're not balanced or you're not happy with who you are and what you've achieved in the end, right? And I'm hearing that a lot from you. You seem to have a very strong heart warrior conscience, right? Particularly the things that you're involved in, children's, fighting children's poverty and hunger and issues of that kind. I know that it's all about, making sure that the environments that these people, these beautiful humans are in, are the most supportive and environments that they can grow. And to do that, we have to be centered in who we are to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that you touched on that. And even going back, what you were saying too, I just wanted to say sometimes the things that come to us, be aware. I just wanted to mention to all of your listeners, be aware of the thoughts that come in your head, also that are lies trying to prevent you from doing your dreams and moving towards your purpose, your mission here on earth. I'll give you a quick example. One of the first books I wrote, I woke up in the morning one day and I heard over and over again, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to write a book. It's probably 100 times. I kept hearing, I laughed it off. My first thought was like, I'm not going to be able to write a book. I have 4 kids. Again, I'm too busy. I have no time. This type of mentality, right? And it's funny because I just kind of laughed it off, forgot about it. And I think I went on Facebook or something. I logged on and the first thing I saw, and it's funny how things that are meant to be will keep showing up until you take action to actually bring them into reality, to take them out of your mind and into the real world. And for me, this was one of those things because I went on Facebook and no word of a lie, the very first thing I saw, the post that was on, was somebody saying, we're looking for people to write books and we have 2 spots left in our program. Would you like to join us? And I just kind of chuckled to myself and I thought, wow, this is too random to not be a coincidence. So as a joke, I sent an email to them saying, I just woke up. I heard I'm supposed to write this book. I really don't even know what I would write a book about, but I'm interested if you're willing to help me write this book and be patient. I find a topic to write about. That was literally what I said to them. And if I got that email, I think I would think, oh my goodness, who is this person that's sending me this message? But yeah, it's interesting. And then I had the next day they reached out to me saying, we'd love to help you. Just let us know once you pick the topic. And again, no word of a lie, the next 2 weeks, there's probably 50 people that I had spoken with, professionals, various level, men, women, didn't matter, all backgrounds over the next 2 weeks from around the world. And every single one of them would ask me, I'm feeling really stuck in life. I really don't know what I'm here for. I don't know what my purpose is. Can you help me? Can you help me? can you help me? Every single person I talked to. So I thought, okay, well, I think that there's something with this topic because everybody keeps asking me about that. So that's how the topic of my first book, which is Uncover Your Purpose, which is kind of what I went through, being a geologist, trying to find my purpose, like my whole journey. And then a lot of the clients I'd worked with at that point also had gone through that journey. So I had a lot of wisdom I felt like I could share on that topic. So that's how my first book basically was birthed, so to speak, into the world. And I didn't want to be a writer. And another example is speaking. I was the shyest child. You couldn't have paid me $1 million to speak in front of 2 people, let alone 100 or, definitely not 1,000, right? Even if that thought would have just, I literally probably would have got sick if I would have thought about that years ago. And it wasn't until I realized, and for people out there too, who have that fear, that's the number one fear in the world, is the fear of public speaking.
Yes.
Right? It's like, it's so interesting, but it's like when you think about it as no longer being about you and about what your message can bring to help other people, it literally changes your perspective. And for me, it just gave me the courage to be able to share, authentically more about my story and my journey of, being and going through what I did to get to where I am now.
Amazing. I love it when speakers, it shows that you can teach everything, those who are terrified of public speaking, because I've had a number of ladies come onto my show who said that, oh, I used to be the shyest person, and you'd never know. So you can, that's right. Once you get over yourself actually and over those fears and then start looking at it from a different perspective, it's absolutely amazing. Tell me about the Global Movement of Hope. Why have you founded this and what does it do?
Yeah, so it actually came about last year. Again, similar situation when I woke up. I just heard the Global Movement of Hope and heard I was supposed to look up the domain. Anyways, all of this and write a book on stories. So this is where it was birthed, was on different stories of hope. And at that time was PTSD stories of trauma around the world and stories about how they overcame the things that they were going through in life. And I did some research online and realized there wasn't really a lot of books and resources out there for people about the end result of a trauma or something that people have gone through to help them through that journey. So it was this book actually that really sparked. And people started sending in submissions of their story, saying, like, just tears of gratitude were flowing, saying, we thank you so much for letting us share our stories. We feel so much lighter. We've never shared our story before. And then there's other people even who'd shared their stories, like prolific leaders. Again, many countries around the world, different backgrounds, from sexual abuse to violence to people overcoming cancer to a gentleman shared his story about his family who was in the Holocaust. So like just phenomenal stories of overcoming and the amazing things that these people were doing now. And then the more I thought about it, it's like I thought about the fact that my name, Nadene, actually means hope. And that's a reason. There's a reason why I was given that name. And it just kept, the more I kept thinking about it, I just kept thinking this is something that's needed in our world on a larger scale, that where we can unite not only people together, because I think this is the basis of everything we do, is our connection with people, with others, being able to authentically share our stories. When we share our stories, this is where we bring hope to people, that there's something else out there beyond what they're going through, and allows them to know that they're not alone. And that was the one thing that came up with so many people I've worked with, is the fact that they thought they were the only one that was going through a difficult time or the specific story that they had, until they started hearing other people share stories about that. And that's what gave them hope. So it's all about, uniting the world in general, people in general, families, communities, cities, nations as a whole, and bringing people together through our story, through our authenticity, through, this unconditional love that we all truly have for one another, and especially in a time of such uncertainty. It was something, it was an urgency actually that I felt that we needed to move as a global entity together towards greater hope and unity for all of our nations, and bringing people together during this time. It wasn't really a question of if, it was just when. And I knew the time was now. And we literally, right now, as we speak, we're in the process of, getting everything, the foundation set up. And there's a bunch of things that are going to come as different pillars off the global movement of hope. But I couldn't be more excited about it. I see people in all nations of the world being a part of it. And over the next 2 to 3 years, like billions of people, billions of lives, like lives being saved through the message that we have of this, of the stories of the people. It's all about the people, and how can we support other people right now during this time and shed light upon that.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. And I love the way it's just come together. It's just meant to be, and often the two words that I think are really undervalued, or that people don't think about too much, are hope and kindness, and they really do change the world. Being kind to others, in just your every day to day, your thought and your words and your deeds, and giving hope to people that, tomorrow will be a better day, that there will be more opportunities, that we can unite together, that we can share, that we can get mentored, that we can help you along your journey. It's not as hard as people say. It is hard to do global change, but when we unite together and we build these connections, and people have that opportunity to share their story, which allows their voice, which is there, but just to come out and to be heard and to be valued, it is life-changing. It really is. And I just so love what you have achieved already, the passionate heart that you have, the areas that you're now really stretching into. And I know you're collaborating globally with a network of people who are 100% behind you and with you on this journey. You're an absolutely inspirational lady to meet, and I thank you so much for being on my program today. Finally, for those listening in, how do you juggle all of this with 4 children? I know your children are still younger than mine. So do you have an army of helpers?
Oh, you know what? The more I've I guess aged and gotten older and had experiences in life, the more I've realized. Actually, I'll tell you a quick story. Do I have time to share a quick story that actually just happened to me in the past 2 months? So these are real life experiences. So I just want people to know I'm a real person too. I think that's so important. So there is things that I go through, even though it's certain things I haven't put out there. So it's like certain things. So for example, my mom got COVID 2 months ago. Very bad. And she's a very healthy woman, never has had anything wrong with her. But she got knocked down so bad in COVID that she literally almost died. Like she said to me, I've never been that close to death in my entire life. And this was difficult for me. I'm going to share this with you. And I actually haven't shared this story yet. You're the first, you're the first place that I've talked to about this, because right around that time, about a week before my mom got COVID, I actually broke my foot. So my right foot, yeah, this is a true story. I swear and I literally broke my foot getting up out of my chair. Long story. I'll save that for another time. But the bone broke right in half. So long story short is I couldn't step on my foot. I had to get a cast. I literally had to walk with crutches for about 2.5 months, where I couldn't even put any pressure on my foot whatsoever. And if I did, the doctor said the bone would have displaced. I would have had to get a pin put in my foot. I would have had to go through surgery. It would have taken at least 6 months to heal. The story goes on and on and on. And I hadn't been in the hospital for 15 years since I was sick and I almost died. I literally hadn't been to the hospital, hadn't been sick, nothing wrong with me. Had the most phenomenal experience, the doctors, the nurses, everybody I was with. But it's interesting because you're asking, how do you do this with 4 children? So I actually had a blessing that my foot broke over these past few months, because I had the opportunity to really see my kids and to have them really help me in a way that they never had before. Even the first week I was home, they were fighting over who could get me a glass of water, who could help, who could do this, who could do that, because I've never been barely sick with a cold, let alone, confined to a chair where I can't even get up to barely get a drink of water for myself. So it was a great lesson. And I think it's a great lesson for everybody, just to ask for help and to know that it's okay to ask for help if you need it. And since then, I've brought on, I think, 2 or 3 other experts onto my team to help make things, just so I can really focus on the things that I'm really a genius at. And I don't have to spend my time working on all these other things that aren't necessarily things that I love to do. And I think it just was an absolute blessing. It allowed me to really free up more time to get clear on where I'm going. And this is where literally a lot of this global movement was birthed out of, and so many other things that I haven't even touched upon. But it was just one of those things that it couldn't have asked for a better time for something like that to happen, and to really sit back, again, allowing other people to help me and seeing how much I was really giving and coming back into that balance of, how important it really is to spend time with your family, to spend time with your loved ones, right? We really never know how long, we're going to be here on earth, let alone our loved ones. And it was a really good check for me, because even with my mother, she was never sick. She never had anything wrong with her. And just to see her go through and being so sick and having my foot broken at the same time and not being able to be there to help her, and the thought that she might not be here, it changed her perspective. She said to me, I'm so grateful that, every breath that I take is like, it's a blessing, right? And it's like the little things, what can we be grateful for? And for me, I had to learn how to walk again. I had to start physio. And it was like the first day, I didn't realize I wasn't going to be able to walk. I thought I'd get my cast off and I'd just be able to walk again. And that wasn't the case. And that's like so many things in life. It's like we have to relearn things sometimes, and we have to take that one step at a time to get to the next step, to get stronger, to learn the things we need to learn so we can move to the next level. And it was, I took 4 steps in like the second day. And for me, I literally thought it was like a miracle that I could take 4 steps. And I never dreamed that I would have to learn, I'm 41 years old. I never dreamed I'd have to learn how to re-walk at 41 years old. So just a blessing, just a reminder for everybody, really, be thankful, be grateful for all the little things every day that we have, because they truly are a blessing.
Yeah, thank you so much. You have been just such a delightful guest. I really thank you for sharing me and with my listeners around the globe in my podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just an absolute honor to be here today. And I appreciate it very much, Annie. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.